Today we have come to the book of Nehemiah. So the series goes like this: a praying people and the promise-keeping God. A praying people, जब कोई प्रार्थना करने के लिए किसी को दिल होता है तो परमेश्वर उसकी दुआओं, उसका प्रार्थना का जवाब देने के लिए तैयार है. He is a promise-keeping God. Jewish people are praying people, and the God of the Bible is a promise-keeping God. When this happens, there is an unbreakable alliance. That's when the Bible says, when God is with us, who can be against us? When God is there to keep His promise, we ought to humble ourselves and ask God to rescue us from our problems, our difficulties, and then we come to realize that there is a God who is always there to answer our prayer. So with that, a praying people and a promise-keeping God, we will see this unbreakable alliance. Even sin and the rebellion attitude of the people of Israel could not break this alliance, because there were some people who always wanted to pray. So today in chapter 1, verse 1 to 11, living for a purpose greater than ourselves. जो जीवन हम जी रहे हैं, किसके लिए जी रहे हैं? रोटी के लिए जी रहे हैं? पेट के लिए जीते हैं? बाइबल कहती है हमें जीवन से ऊंचा एक उद्देश्य होना चाहिए. जीवन में खुद से ऊंचा उद्देश्य होना चाहिए. So in Nehemiah chapter 1, we will see a man who is living for something greater than himself. When our life is the ultimate objective for our living, then we become tired, we lose hope, we lose direction. But if there is something greater than ourselves for which we are living, then the purpose carries us all. So Zerubbabel, let's quickly run through the history. Zerubbabel came to Jerusalem about 538 BC, and after almost 100 years, Ezra came to Jerusalem in about 555 BC, and now Nehemiah is coming to Jerusalem about 10 years later than Ezra. From the book of Ezra, we saw how the Jews in Jerusalem had abandoned their faithfulness to God. Instead of building the temple and the city, they were busy for themselves. They were busy to build their own houses. And then comes Ezra and Nehemiah, along with prophet Haggai, Zechariah and Malachi. They come to demonstrate to us that our lives become valuable only if we can find a purpose greater than ourselves and our personal survival. Haggai is the one say, how could you so be busy in building your own house, whereas the house of God is in ruin, house of God is destroyed. Let us find a purpose that is greater than ourselves. And if we find that purpose, then that purpose will help us to carry on our living here. So इस चैप्टर में हम देखेंगे कि अगर हमारे जीवन का जो जीने का उद्देश्य वो खुद से बड़ा नहीं है तो हम निराश हो जाते हैं. लेकिन हमारे जीवन से ऊंचा कोई उद्देश्य हमारे जीवन में आता है तो वो हमें आगे जाने के लिए मदद करता है. Nehemiah, Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, all these prophets, उनके जीवन में ऐसा उद्देश्य है जो उनका जीवन से ऊंचा है, महान है. इसीलिए हमारे जीवन में अर्थ और मीनिंग भी, पर्पस भी होता है. Let us read Nehemiah chapter 1 verse 1 to 4. Let us read. In the month, the words of Nehemiah son of Hakaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And the title for this section I say, The God-Conscious Jewish Thinking. The Jewish people, wherever they were, even though at times they forget God, but their mind is not far from God. Whether in good times or bad times, they have this amazing sense of thinking about God. Nehemiah is in the capital of Babylon, in Persian Empire, and he is very important person in the royal household. But his mind is always thinking about how God is working in Jerusalem. So some people from Judah, they come, along with comes his brother also. So the first thing Nehemiah says, how is Jerusalem? How are the people living in Jerusalem? And the news is that the gates are burned down, walls are fallen, and people are living in disgrace. The Jewish people were supposed to live in the favor of God, in the grace of God. They had all the means available at their disposal when they came from Babylon to rebuild the wall, to rebuild the temple, but they had abandoned God. So here is another man living in luxury, in all kind of privilege in Babylon, and he is only thinking about what God is doing in Jerusalem. And he says, after he heard this news, he began to weep, and then he began to mourn, and he began to fast, and he began to pray. When we are thinking something greater than about ourselves, we always have purpose in life. Nehemiah was not thinking about himself. If he was thinking about himself, who cares about Jerusalem? Who cares about the broken down wall? Who cares about the disgrace of the people in Jerusalem? He was living a very powerful life, and everything he had at his disposal. He could be satisfied with the material things, but in life, this worldly success does not give us रियल सेटिस्फैक्शन. इस दुनिया में नेहमाया के सामने सब कुछ था. उसके हाथ में शक्ति थी और संपत्ति थी और सम्मान भी था, लेकिन अगर हमारे जीने का उद्देश्य सिर्फ इस दुनिया की धन और दौलत और जीने के लिए हम जीते हैं, तो इसमें खास उद्देश्य और संतुष्टि भी हमें नहीं मिलती. इसीलिए जब नेहमाया ने सुना कि जेरूशलेम जहाँ परमेश्वर का शहर है और परमेश्वर के लोग शांति और आनंद में जीने के उसके सब दूर होकर डिसग्रेस में जी रहे हैं, यरूशलेम का वॉल भी गिरा हुआ है और गेट में आग लगी हुई है, सारे लोग और एक बेइज्जती से जीवन बिता रहे हैं, तो नेहमाया के दिल में आग उठ जल पड़ी है. वो रोने लगा, वो बिलाप करने लगा और फास्ट एंड प्रेड, प्रार्थना कर, हे परमेश्वर, यरूशलेम में आपकी बेइज्जती हो रही है, आपके लोगों की बेइज्जती हो रही है, क्योंकि ये लोग जो बाबिलोन से गए थे उनके हाथ में सब कुछ था, लेकिन परमेश्वर को छोड़ दिया उन लोगों ने. इसीलिए हमने कुछ हफ्तों पहले हग्गाई के संदेश से देखा था कि जब ये लोग परमेश्वर से दूर चले गए, जब इन लोगों का उद्देश्य जीने का मकसद सिर्फ पेट था, तो ये बहुत सारे मेहनत करते थे लेकिन थोड़ा कुछ कमा लेते थे. इनके जीवन में ऐसा छेद हुआ जैसा बास्केट में ये अपनी सारे धन दौलत डाल रहे थे. तो जितना वो कमाते थे कुछ उसमें कुछ भी उन लोगों के लिए शांति नहीं मिलती. Because they had abandoned God, because they had made their stomach their only purpose. So every time we make our personal life the only purpose of living, then there is no real fulfillment in life. There is no real conviction. So Nehemiah begins to demonstrate a kind of a desperation and say, oh God, how can I live in Babylon peacefully? How can I live in the palace with all this luxury, whereas your name is disgraced, your people are living in disgrace, your city is burned down, your temple is not honored. So that's how Nehemiah demonstrates the God consciousness, God conscious thinking of the Jewish people. Whatever they do, they somehow knew back in their DNA that they were supposed to be the people who will give God the glory. The whole world was gone against God. The Jews were supposed to be the people who would worship Him. But now again, Jews in Jerusalem have failed to do so. And Nehemiah takes upon himself the responsibility to call upon God. So, हमारे जीवन में भी, हमारे दिमाग में हर रोज़ क्या होता है? जब हम सुबह जगते हैं तो हमारे दिमाग में क्या होता है? What do you think from the time you wake up in the morning? दिन भर जब हम काम में चलते हैं, इधर उधर करते, what is in our head? What do we think about? Are we thinking about, Lord, how can I bring glory to your name? How can I live a life that will honor your name? How can I live a life that brings the grace of God in my life instead of disgrace of this world? Is your thinking God conscious? If your mind is occupied with the things of God, what happens? Whatever you think, so it happens in your life. बाइबल बहुत जोर से कहते हैं कि जिस तरह का हमारा सोच होता है उसी तरह का जीवन हमारे हाथ में आ जाएगा. अगर हम सिर्फ पेट के लिए जीने के लिए सोचते हैं तो उसी में भूल जाते हैं, जीते जीते मर जाते हैं. जीने का कोई मकसद नहीं होता है. लेकिन अगर परमेश्वर का सोच हमारे दिमाग में होता है, परमेश्वर के लिए जीने के लिए हम सोचते हैं, तो परमेश्वर खुद हमारे जीवन में उसका अनुग्रह, ग्रेस लेकर आता है. यहाँ पे डिसग्रेस दिखाई दे रहा है. इन लोगों के जीवन में डिसग्रेस था जेरूशलेम में. नेहमिया कहता है कि हे प्रभु, हमें डिसग्रेस नहीं, हमें ग्रेस चाहिए. That is the longing of a man who has God in his mind. He doesn't care much about his own personal success. He doesn't care much about his personal fulfillment. He thinks about God, and he thinks about the people of God. He thinks about the city of God. He thinks about the temple of God. And as a result, he is weeping and crying and fasting and praying. Let us read, how did he pray? नेहमिया का प्रार्थना को देखते हैं हम. Verse 5 to 6. Then I said, Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer your servant is praying before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly towards you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and the laws you gave your servant Moses. Then we have here a prayer-centered life of Jewish people. First we see the God-conscious way of thinking. ये यहूदियों का दिमाग में परमेश्वर का सोच होता है, वो गॉड कॉन्शियस जीवन जीते हैं. सेकंड, प्रेयर सेंटर्ड लाइफ. ज्यूइश पीपल इतना प्रार्थना में दिल लगाते हैं कि उनके सर पे प्रार्थना लिखा होता है. उनके जो शॉल लगाते हैं, शॉल के हर कोने में एक प्रार्थना के लिए रिमाइंडिंग होता है. जब वो घर से बाहर निकलते हैं, घर से बाहर निकलने में दरवाजे के सामने उनका प्रेयर पत्री होता है, उसको छोकर जाते हैं. और घर बाहर से घर आने के समय में गेट में वही होता है. तो डे एंड नाइट Jewish people have a thinking or the life that is centered in prayer. प्रार्थना में वो जीवन बिताते हैं. इसी तरह नया नियम में बाइबल कहती है कि pray without ceasing. हर समय प्रार्थना में हमारा जीवन घूमता रहता होना चाहिए. अगर हम गॉड कॉन्शियस नहीं, परमेश्वर के बारे में सोचते नहीं और प्रार्थना में हमारा दिल ही नहीं जाता, तो हमारे जीवन में ग्रेस नहीं, डिसग्रेस ही दिखाई देगा. और हमारे जीवन में कोई लक्ष्य, उद्देश्य और संतुष्टि और खुशी नहीं होगा, उसके विपरीत हो जाएगा. जितना भी हम कमाएंगे उसमें खुशी नहीं होगी, जितना भी खाएंगे उसमें संतुष्टि नहीं होगा, क्योंकि परमेश्वर ने हमें खाने के लिए, रोटी के लिए नहीं बनाया है. अपनी महिमा के लिए बनाया है। इसीलिए यीशु मसीह कहता है कि Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. So, prayer-centered life will always give us hope in times of hopelessness. Prayer-centered life will always see a solution to the problems we face. Prayer-centered life will always give us purpose that is greater than ourselves. When we have a God who is a promise-keeping God, this is what he says. ये क्या कहता है? In verse 5, you are an awesome God who keeps his covenant of love. परमेश्वर कहता है कि मैं तुम्हें प्रार्थना का जवाब दूंगा. He is always there to fulfill his promise. He is a covenant keeping God. Are we prayer centered people? Are we praying to God with the sincerity that we see in the life of Nehemiah? जब हम प्रार्थना के लिए आते हैं, क्या हम दिल से वो प्रार्थना करते हैं? या चर्च में हम जब आराधना करने के लिए आते हैं, क्या दिल से हम परमेश्वर को महिमा देने के लिए आते हैं? नेहमिया के जीवन में देख लेते हैं, वो उसका दिल से वो रो रहा है, वो बिलाप कर रहा है, और फास्ट एंड प्रे, खाना भी उसने छोड़ दिया कि प्रभु जब तक मेरे जीवन में आपका प्रार्थना जवाब नहीं आएगा, I will continue to pray. Day and night. कब तक प्रार्थना करता है? He said, I keep praying day and night. हर रोज, हर रात, हर सुबह, हर शाम को प्रार्थना में उसका दिमाग जा रहा है. So when there is a praying people and there is a promise-keeping God, you have a divine intervention at all time. So जब हम देखते हैं मणिपुर में कैसा हो रहा है, भारत का बहुत जगह में चर्च में आक्रमण हो रहा है. ऐसी परिस्थितियों में भी जब सारे लोग प्रार्थना में परमेश्वर के चरण में आते हैं, तो परमेश्वर उन लोगों का प्रार्थना को सुनने के लिए तैयार है. God is always ever ready to hear the prayer of the people who will call upon him. And when we pray, look at here, let's see this. Few things from Nehemiah's prayer. Number one, God is a promise-keeping God, the covenant-keeping God. Then Nehemiah is dead serious in what he is praying. He is not just having a wishful thinking. He is not wishing, oh God, I wish I had this in life. Oh God, I wish I had that in life. वो सिर्फ कल्पना में नहीं हो. He is serious about it. He really wants to see that happening in his life. So what did he do? He is praying day and night. That shows how serious he is. He is confessing his sin and the sins of his people. जब हम परमेश्वर के सामने में आते हैं, तो हमें पता चलता है कि हमारे जीवन में कितना बुराई है, कितना पाप और अधर्म हमारे दिल में, दिमाग में, हाथ में, मुख में होता है. And then after he confesses his prayer, then he said fasting and mourning and weeping, so how desperate he is to hear from God. Are we desperate to hear from God? प्रभु अगर तू हम मेरे जीवन में नहीं आया तो मैं बर्बाद हो जाऊंगा. इस तरह वो बहुत दिल से, जोर से प्रार्थना कर रहा है. अगर इसी तरह हमारे आज का दिन में भी परमेश्वर के सामने में जाकर प्रार्थना में ये डेस्परेट होकर हम प्रार्थना करते हैं, तो परमेश्वर अपना प्रॉमिस जरूर रखेगा. He is a promise keeping God. He never breaks his promise. But it is us. We fail to see the need, first of all, of having a God conscious mind. We never think about God. We only think about God when we are when there is no other solution. Nehemiah is not in a desperate situation so far as he personally concerned. His personal life is good. He may have had a family or children. He is in a very powerful office. He is the right-hand man of the king of the empire. But even at that time, his mind is thinking about God and the people of God. And then the only solution is, he didn't go to the king to ask his solution. He did not say, oh king, give me this, give me that, help me. Even though Nehemiah was so close to the king, he has never told the king what is bothering him. We'll see in chapter 2. But in chapter 1, we see a man who is desperate in prayer. And how did he pray? Taking God at his word. कभी कभी लगता है कि परमेश्वर है या नहीं, बिकॉज हम बाइबल को खोलते नहीं, देखते नहीं, पढ़ते नहीं, अगर पढ़ते हैं तो उसको विश्वास ही नहीं करते हैं. लेकिन देखिए Nehemiah, how does he take God at his word? Verse 9, 8 and 9. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses. In other words, Nehemiah is reminding God what God had said. Remember what you told to Moses. You're a promise keeping God. This is the promise. आपने मूसा के साथ ऐसा कहा था प्रभु, इसलिए अब आपकी प्रॉमिस को मैं आपको समझाना चाहता हूँ. परमेश्वर जो प्रॉमिस देता है उसको हमने पकड़ना चाहिए. इसी Remember your instruction you gave your servant Moses. What did God say to Moses? He said, if you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling place for my name. In other words, God has spoken to Moses that if you are unfaithful, you will be scattered. And God fulfilled that promise. And now Nehemiah is praying, Lord, as you fulfill your promise of scattering the exile, now I pray you are already starting the gathering also. Now Jerusalem is your place. There is your name. So gather your people there. Build your people there. Don't let your people live in disgrace. That is what he is telling. And finally, while he was praying for a purpose greater than himself. जब हम प्रार्थना करते हैं तो कभी कभी क्या होता है, हम खुद के सारे प्रॉब्लम लेकर प्रभु के पास जाते हैं. लेकिन कभी कभी सोचना चाहिए कि मैं किसके लिए जी रहा हूँ. मेरे प्रार्थना में परमेश्वर के नाम के लिए कुछ है, परमेश्वर की महिमा के लिए मैं कुछ मांग रहा हूँ, और खुद के लिए सिर्फ इंटरेस्ट दिखाई दे रहा हूँ. Let us read Nehemiah's prayer. So after he reminds God about what he said, these are your word. Then he said, they are your servant and your people, and whom you redeemed, and your great strength and your mighty hand. Let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting me favor in the presence of this man. I was cupbearer to the king. You see how many times you. Nehemiah's focus is on God. God, I am asking you to give me success so that I will bring glory to your name. Your people, the Jews, I am your servant, your nation, your temple, your promises, Lord. Hear my prayer. Give me success. हम जीवन में सक्सेस होना तो चाहते हैं, किसके लिए? खुद के लिए. नेहमिया का प्रार्थना में हम देखते हैं वो सक्सेस होना चाहता है, लेकिन खुद के लिए नहीं, परमेश्वर के लिए, परमेश्वर की महिमा के लिए. तो इसीलिए जीवन में हम जो कुछ करना चाहते हैं उसके पीछे परमेश्वर का महिमा होना चाहिए. परमेश्वर के लिए जब हम करते हैं तो परमेश्वर अपना प्रतिज्ञा भी हमारे जीवन में पूरा करता है. He will fulfill His word in our life if we can take the attitude of Nehemiah. Finally, conclusion. As disciples of Jesus Christ, we are not to live for ourselves. We are to live for God's glory. Just like we saw Nehemiah's prayer. You and I, no matter how big we are or how small we are, wherever we are, whatever we do in life, the purpose of a Christian is to live for the glory of God. Let us read 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 31 to 33. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. खाना खाते हैं, पीते हैं, जो कुछ भी हम करते हैं, पीते हैं तो दारू पीने के लिए नहीं कह रहा है. दारू पीने में परमेश्वर की महिमा होती है तो ठीक है. खाएंगे या जो कुछ भी हम करते हैं उसके पीछे परमेश्वर का महिमा होना चाहिए. Whatever you do, do it for the glory of 32. Do not cause anyone to stumble, whether Jews, Greeks or the church of God. और इस तरह हमें जीना चाहिए कि हमारे जीवन के कारण दूसरों को ठेस न पहुंचे। अगर कोई चर्च में आना चाहता है, यीशु मसीह में विश्वास करना चाहता है, तो हमें देखकर वो चर्च से दूर ना हो, यीशु मसीह से दूर न चले। Don't be a stumbling block for anyone. 33. Even as I try to please everyone in every way, for I am not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. So दो पर्पस हमारे जीवन में है, एक परमेश्वर की महिमा, दो लोगों की मुक्ति। पड़ोसी जो है हमारे, रिश्तेदार जो है हमारे, क्या उन लोगों के जीवन में मुक्ति आई है? उन लोगों ने यीशु मसीह को पहचाना नहीं अभी तक। तो हमारे प्रार्थना होने चाहिए, हमारे पर्पस, उद्देश्य होना चाहिए कि प्रभु मेरे पड़ोसी, मेरे रिश्तेदार, मेरे फैमिली, माय फ्रेंड, wherever I go, I want to bring them to the saving knowledge. That's my purpose. And then when they come to the saving knowledge, they're going to give God the glory, and then I am living for the glory of God. So our purpose in life should be greater than ourselves. And what is that purpose? It is for the glory of God and for the good of others. This good of others, let us read. When we live for the glory of God and the good of others, God hears our prayers and gives us whatever we ask from Him. Then the answer to our prayers, परमेश्वर की महिमा के लिए हम जीते हैं और दूसरों की भलाई के लिए हम जीते हैं, तो हम खुद से ऊपर जी रहे हैं। इस तरह का जीवन में जब हम प्रार्थना करते हैं तो परमेश्वर कहता है कि I will give it to you. Let's read 1 John 3:21-22. Dear friends, if our hearts do not condemn us, अगर हम परमेश्वर की महिमा के लिए जीते हैं तो हमारे hearts will not condemn us. We have confidence before God and receive from Him anything we ask, because we keep His commands and do what pleases Him. अगर हम इस तरह का जीवन बिताते हैं तो हम खुद से ऊपर होकर जीवन जी रहे हैं। We are living for greater than ourselves. And when we have this purpose in life, and then that purpose comes because we have God-conscious way of thinking. And then once we have the God-conscious way of thinking, then we are living a prayer-centered life. And what do we pray for? We pray for the glory of God. We pray, Lord, let your name be exalted. Let your name be preached. Let your name be proclaimed. Let your name be revered throughout this earth. And then how do we do that? By bringing people to the saving knowledge. So all that we do in this world, if that is the purpose, then we are like Nehemiah, living for the glory of God and living for the good of other people. So with that, let me close today's message, and let's sing one chorus. In His time